Tonight, if you thought Zatanna was already the apex of the male fantasy, you ain't seen nothing yet. Catwoman decided to finally make me hate it just a little bit more by doing the unforgivable, releasing a new issue. And Superman has a new writer and artist, and only one of those is a good thing. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 147 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it's a whatever week. I'm not gonna try to brush over that. We got 14 comics this week. Not a single one of them is involved in an event. We do have technically a few things that are a little bit special in that we have the start of a run and an end of a series, so that's cool. But I am going to use the fact that it's not that special of a week to do a little experiment here at the beginning. See, I know from like back-end statistical stuff that a lot of you listen to this via audio feeds. And to that I say, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I mean, I put a lot of work into the visuals on this, but I understand. Some of you are just driving your car. Some of you listening at work. You can't take note of the amazing things that go on screen. I once brought a horse in and you missed it because it was quiet like that. That's a lie. I didn't. But regardless, I do want to hold a little experiment for the YouTube version because I literally have no other place to do this. And that is apparently if you talk about the LIKE button or the SUBSCRIBE button, they'll light up on at least the mobile version, maybe the desktop version, but I've never done that before and I really want to give it a shot. So if you'll excuse me, I'm just going to take a second to like shamelessly pimp this out. Click that like button. Smash that like button. Look at the like button. So that should have lit that up. And now let me try the other one. Be sure to subscribe. Click the subscribe button. Hold on, one more. Smash that bell. I doubt that one did anything, but we'll see. Just a little test I wanted to run. So we now resume your normal programming. Anyway, what do we got coming out this week? Like I said, 14 comics, and in no particular order, we have Batman, Catwoman, Superman, Larfleeze, Red Lantern, Sinestro, Aquaman, The Flash, Justice League, Secret Origins, All-Star Western, Justice League Dark, and then our two weekly series, which are Batman Eternal and Future's End. And the big ones out of that, you can call them big ones, is final issue of Larfleeze for all two people who have been caring about that series. And Superman gets a new run starting this issue with Geoff Johns writing and John Romita art on Jr. So be thankful this is an audio-based podcast and you don't got to look at that art, because hoo-wee, is it a tough one. Anyway, that should basically do it. We're already in stock for a long episode anyway, so let's just jump right on into whatever the hell I decide to put first. Superman number 32, written by Geoff Johns, art by John Romita Jr. Start of a new run, and we open up 25 years ago, where we are at the Ulysses Research Center, and alarms are blaring, everything's going nuts. We meet up with a scientist couple named Bridget and Peter, and apparently there's something about breaching Dimension 2. It doesn't really matter, but point being is that everything's going wrong and the whole facility's about to explode. So they try to run out, but they're locked in via quarantine protocols. The whole lab is getting screwy with energy. And they're just like, oh, but it's not just us, Peter. It's our son as well. Our son, Neil. What do we do with Neil? And Peter is like, I have an idea. And they say, we have to use Dimension 4. So he takes him over and he starts up this portal sequence. And it's just like, Dimension 4? But we've never tested that before. And it's like, well, we've got this ship that can go into it. And we know there's life on the other side. And we know that it'll treat him well. So be safe, my son. In time, you will learn to whatever. It's the Superman story. It's clearly paralleling that. So they put him inside the ship, they say goodbye, and then they send him off into Dimension 4. And we see little Neil come out, and his eyes are full of energy already. So, cut to today, and Superman's beating up Titano, the giant robot ape. And somewhere nearby, Jimmy Olsen is snapping pictures, and he's like, oh man, this is going to be my big shot. And he takes the picture, but it turns out it gets all blurry because Titano breathed on the lens right before he went down. So he's trying to sell it to Perry White, and Perry's like, Olsen, let me ask you something. In your current continuity, you were left like millions upon millions of dollars by your parents because they're criminals or whatever, or like white collar criminals, and you're still trying to work the Daily Planet. And he's like, oh well, yeah, because when my parents show back up, they're totally gonna want that money back, so I'm not trying to spend any of it. I'm trying to live on my own. So are you gonna buy the picture or what? And he's like, this is a crappy picture of Superman, but fine, yeah, sure, whatever, here's a meal voucher, go nuts. And Jimmy's like, hooray, I get to eat. So at that point, Clark Kent shows up, and Perry's just like, okay, Clark, let's step aside, let's chat. And they walk down a hall, and they show all the like classic Daily Planet papers, and just like, yeah, look, Superman lives, Superman dies, all that stuff. But here's the big one, and that is Lex Luthor saves the world. That's the most recent one. And I gotta tell you, man, the world is a bit screwy when bad guys like Lex Luthor are being viewed as good guys, but the news industry is through the roof. So I want you, ace reporter Clark Kent, back at the Daily Planet. And he's like, didn't I get fired because Morgan Edge didn't want me here? Like, I don't think I'm allowed back. And he's like, screw that. We're messing with the continuity. I'm Perry White. Now I can hire whoever I want. So you want back in? And he's like, I mean, I don't know. And he's like, Clark, why do you keep separating yourself from people? I could see you could have asked out Lois Lane. You never did. You never make friends here. Like, why do you not want to be a part of things? So we cut to later on, and we see Clark getting back home. He's calling Diana on the phone. She's busy with her book. So we intercut with him, like, making some food for himself and cleaning the dishes. Meanwhile, Lois and other people from the Daily Planet are out at a bar. Jimmy Olsen is meeting with some evil corporate accountants about his parents' money. Sure. And then as Clark is looking through a family photo album, he hears someone screaming out for help. So he immediately takes off his shirt, gets Superman, and runs out the door. And flying in the sky is this huge, I don't know how to, it's like a javelin looking thing, but it's just a giant black stick floating in the sky and starts zapping people. So Superman's like, all right, let's see what that's all about. So he rips it open, gets inside, and is immediately blasted out by energy. Then we cut to someone watching him on a screen. Everything's green tinted. And we see a man in a hood say, Clark, come on, get up. I taught you how to get up. And so at that point, Superman gets back up. He's like, all right, let's try again. So first off, we don't know who this is. There is no name given. I assume we'll eventually get around to it. But Superman's like, all right, well, an alien just stepped out of the ship. He's very clearly hurting people. I get to take him down now. So Clark blasts him with his heat vision, but then he's not able to control it, and it starts just like going nuts at the guy. So Superman has to put his hand over his eyes, and he's like, what did you just do to me, man? The alien takes the opportunity to knock Superman aside and just starts like beating the crap out of him pretty effectively. These energy blasts are doing a lot against him when all of a sudden, out of a portal, random new guy shows up, tackles this alien, manages to take him out. And he speaks the same language as the alien. And as this new guy comes up and starts attacking the alien, Superman gets to his feet as well. They both give a good punch in opposite directions, and it explodes the alien. And as he's out, Superman's like, hey man, cool, do you speak English? Or am I even making any sense to you? And this new guy's like, oh, you speak English, but that cannot be. Where am I? And he's like, oh, you're in Metropolis. It's in America. And he's like, America? That's not possible. But the guy said that he would find and destroy my homeworld, but I wasn't that worried about it because, like, my homeworld was already dead. But it seems like I'm wrong. Earth has survived. And Superman's like, yeah, I don't even know what you're talking about, but yes, it's here. Who are you? And he's like, oh, well, I am called Ulysses, and I thought I was the last son of Earth, but I'm not alone. And that's where we get introduced to Ulysses, the not last son of Earth. All right, so here's the thing. it's a fine enough intro. It does feel to me like Geoff Johns just has to take like an issue or two and get pieces on the board where he wants them. He says like, look, Clark clearly works at the Daily Planet, and Jimmy Olsen having all this money is weird, but I'm going to make a thing out of it. And then, you know, we're setting up Ulysses as a character at the same time. The problem is the John Romita Jr. art. In this issue, it's not bad. There are a lot of panels here where I'm like, okay, all right, that looked pretty decent, all things considered. But I realized the panels that I found looked pretty decent are the ones that have absolutely nothing going on in the background. The moment that there's like Superman fighting Titano or like Superman fighting against this alien, the backgrounds go very blank and they're very much like undetailed. And that's where I'm starting to like already know that John Romita Jr. is not the artist for me. And just randomly flipping through this book, looking ahead, yeah, nah, that's going to stay up. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind when I rate it. But I think this one is probably just like a flat 7 for me. I'm not super pumped about it, but it is still technically fine. It's an all right book. I could see myself enjoying the next one, but yeah, it's just not great, if that makes any sense. Batman number 32, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. So last issue we had a whole big thing where Batman came in and him, Lucius Fox, Jim Gordon all worked together to put like a tracking thing to figure out where in the hell is Riddler broadcasting from. This issue opens up with a single page of sometime before where Bruce just gives a homeless guy like $10,000 and says, hey, I need a new butler. And that's I have no idea if that's going to tie into anything, but it's there. So we cut over to modern Gotham and we see one of these Riddler robots is primed and defending something. Batman sneaks up with a knife behind it and like takes it out. And so he says, all right, I'm into the building. And we get a 3-way comm call between him, Lucius Fox, and Jim Gordon. And the issue here is that the plan is very hush-hush under wraps. So we get it over the course of time, but it's very slow to be revealed. But the gist of it is they have used this stuff to narrow down and figure out, okay, he's in this like central control area underneath Wayne Tower. It's also got a bunch of different trains that go in and out underneath it. So like he's going to have a lot of escape routes, but all of them have been flooded except for the one that Jim Gordon and the team of Marines or whatever have taken control of. Meanwhile, Batman's coming in through the top side as to flush Riddler down south. And then apparently Lucius is the backup plan, I guess you'd want to say, where if something goes wrong and it looks like Riddler's about to launch something, he can turn on this big scrambler device and it's going to stop him from calling anything. However, it's super dangerous and could totally kill Lucius because of just how much energy throughput it has. So we see Jim and crew making their way through, saying like, yeah, no, Batman, this isn't easy. There's tripwires and stuff like that. Also, on the wall, there are these question mark boxes. Like, what's that all about? And Batman says like, oh, well, you know, it's probably just to take in signal and like hack it and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And he's like, well, hold on, you said there were multiple ones? He should only need one. I don't know why there's multiple ones. That's weird. So at this point, one of the Marine guys says, hey, by the way, we have this thing. We have a little code thing we can type into our little pads here. And in doing so, it will tell our home base that everything has gone tits up and we need an airstrike on our location immediately. And they're like, but we're deep underground. He's like, doesn't matter. His airstrike will like burrow underground and it will take everything out. And that's the point where Batman's like, ah, crap, this is all part of his plan. Hey, everyone, like Lucius, do the backup plan, do it now. But he's cut from the call, it's too late. And we see Riddler has a bunch of his little robots come up and say like, hey, Batman, you're climbing in an elevator shaft. I'm just going to shoot you now. That's what I'm going to do. And he's like, yeah, all right. Batman throws a smoke grenade, manages to briefly escape, tries to get in recontact with Jim or Lucius. No luck, so Riddler sends in more robots, and he's like, ah, yes, your plan has been canceled, Batman. Your plan to life, that is. Ah, ha, ha, ha. And so Batman jumps out the window, grabs hold of one of the drones, and Riddler goes on one of Scott Snyder's patented, here's a thing I learned in an encyclopedia. And he says how there's this breed of bat who flies so high up into the atmosphere that they lose their breath and then they just fall down to Earth dead. And so we see the drone go up and up and up. Batman hits it with an axe, which I don't even know where he got that. And then the drone, it explodes. And then he starts falling down to Earth. So we then see what's going on with Jim and Lucius. They figure out that since Batman's not responding, he better launch the backup plan. But before he can, Lucius's van that he's working out the back of is attacked by another one of the drones. And the Riddler face is like, haha, well, I probably shot you there, but I'm going to reload and shoot you some more. And then he says something about foxes, because Lucius Fox, get it? But at this point, Batman shows back up. He somehow survived the fall. And he takes out the drone before going to attack Lucius. And he's like, yeah, no, the whole city's now a no-go zone for communication. There's no way we're going to be able to do it. Can you launch the device? Can we stop him from, making any calls or whatever? Because he's totally going to hack into their device and call in their airstrike soon. And Lucius is like, nah, man, he blew it up when he shot me. There's a whole bunch of, it's messed up. The wiring's all screwed. So Batman gets pissed. He breaks the little drone in half. And he's like, all right, look, I did a printout. When I realized something was going screwy, I did one last printout to see if there was anything updated across the grid. We can compare it to old stuff. What do you see? Is there anything on here that you see? Because in 40 minutes, that's somehow they figure out 40 minutes, that thing is going to get the airstrike here and we're all going to die. So we've got to figure out exactly where he is, but we only get one guess at it. And so Lucius looks at it. He's like, I got nothing. I see absolutely nothing here. As if he's not at the Wayne Tower, then no, I have no idea. And so Batman says, I have an idea. Over here. And he's like, what? But that's at the edge of the city. There's no reason to think that. And he's like, right. But I think that. And he's like, well, I mean, you're Batman, so sure, whatever. So, but then Lucius says, okay, but because he's not in the tower, that's where our plan was. We don't have any way of stopping him. He can set up the balloons and stuff still. And Batman says, remember the first idea we had? And Lucius goes, but that was an impossible idea. And Batman says, make it possible. So I don't know what the hell his plan is, but Lucius says he'll figure it out. So Batman, he walks across the city, just walks as we see the fighter jets starting to scramble, getting ready for their airstrike. He leaves a message to Alfred and basically says hey, Alfred, I'm sorry, you were right. Batman, he probably is going to die for this city, and I'm just letting you know that, I hope we can come back and you can tear me a new one. Anyway, bye. So he walks into the building, and he says, all right, Riddler, show yourself, I know you're here. And all of a sudden the light kicks on, and we find that I believe it's the museum from way back during the early parts of Zero Year, because he walks in and there's the Sphinx there, and Riddler gives him the slow clap on the way out. He's like, you found me. How'd you do it? And he's like, well, the thing, it kind of looked like a question mark or a zero or whatever it is, but in actuality it was a coil, like that board game that was all the way with the really cool panels that we did in that one issue. Yeah, I recognized it. And he's like, all right, cool. Anyway, I'm still going to destroy the city. And he's like, not if I have anything to say about it. And he's like, oh, but Batman, the real game is just beginning. And then he snaps his fingers, and all of a sudden it turns into a disco. I think these are supposed to be tripwires, but it's multicolored rainbow. It turns into a disco. So final thing says, next up, the finale of Zero Year. So we did it. We're here. We're at the finale. It was good. It was an all right issue. It definitely felt like we should have just already been at the finale. Don't get me wrong. I get the idea of oh, we have to put this timer on it, and we gotta have the heroes at their lowest, and it's just one guess to show how awesome Batman is. I get it. I understand. But in doing so, this issue is definitely just an extremely formulaic of all right, here's how we just get all the pieces where we need to get them, and then give it so that the finale has this heart-stopping thing of how are they going to stop the scrambling of the jets, and how's Batman going to get out of this one. So all in all, it's not awful. It's not a bad issue. It's just very setting up for the finale, I guess is the best way to say it. So I'll give it I don't know. I guess I'll give it like a 7.5. Like, it's not quite into great territory, but it is still a solid issue. And I honestly, I remember reading this trade like front to back. It kept me engaged. It wasn't like this was an issue that all of a sudden I was just out of it. So yeah, 7.5. Catwoman number 32, written by Nocenti, art by Patrick Olliffe. Last issue, who knows, who cares? This issue, more the same. So, the race of thieves is still going on, and this time it's now an actual literal race. Catwoman and all the other thieves get their wacky racers out, and Roulette is on a train, a bullet train, and she's like, all right, first one to catch up to me wins, and there you go, it's whatever. So she fires off the thing and everyone starts taking off. Catwoman's in like a souped up, just normal ass car. Mirror Master is in a actual literal rocket that then immediately loses its rocket capabilities. And then Rat Tail, who honest to God, I don't even remember being in this book. He shows up and he immediately gets his bike wrecked and has to help out Catwoman. And Catwoman basically says, hey, by the way, remember that stuff going on about like the dead woman's body and like who her fortune went to and like solving her murder or whatever? We're just going to talk about that as we're doing this race because Rat Tail is like super interested. So I'll be honest, I have no goddamned idea what in the hell this plot is. So this one dude, who I'm just going to say is like the consultant. I'm sure he has a name. But the consultant is like messing with the coroner and he's like, yes, I've run ballistics on how she could be shot. Here, 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 here. Her body's in remarkable condition. I can solve this case. And the coroner's like, she should have been left in peace. How dare you mess with her body or whatnot? And he's like, but check this. It says it was a sniper, but in actuality, the blood splatter says it was up close. And the coroner's like, that could just be vinegar on the walls or something. So the coroner's basically like pissed off. He just leaves. The consultant comes in and he's just like, this woman was beautiful and whatnot. And Catwoman, because she's just around for all of this as Selena Kyle, she's like, you're in love with her great-great-granddaughter thing, aren't you? That's the whole reason you're doing all this. And he's just like, whatever. So he continues to look at it, and he makes a point of saying that he got traces of skin cells, and he's going to run that against all this other stuff, and something about a baby being born out of wedlock, and that's the key to all this. And he's like, yes, but the child would have been left out on the streets. And Selena's like, the poor child. So then we go back to the race, and literally nothing happens. They blast through, and then all of a sudden, a helicopter shows up and says, this is Interpol. We will shoot you if you do not stop racing. Mind you, at one point they said they were on a reservation, which would lead you to believe that a Native American reservation. But then there's a dude with a camel. Regardless, they end up like shooting some cars out of the sky, or you know what I mean. And whatever, nothing really happens. And then all of a sudden Rat Tail's like, tell me more about this corpse story. So we see Rita and the consultant are like getting all buddy-buddy with each other as he's just like, yes, I think I might have the clues to this child out of wedlock, blah, blah, blah. But like, I need you to get the court report unsealed so I could figure out what's happening. She's like, of course I will do that. And then the coroner comes back in and it's just like, you guys are stupid and idiots and I hate every last one of you. And the consultant like lays down his whole theory. He's just like, yes, she had a baby out of wedlock and was going to leave that baby her entire inheritance. So the son was super angry and he shot her before she could. And she's just like, no, it's not. What are you talking about? And then he says that like, yes, I did a blood test and she was full of arsenic. And the coroner says like, women back in the Victorian ages just took little dashes of arsenic to keep their skin pale. That's totally normal. That's absolutely a normal thing. So then Catwoman, and mind you, this is all like 10 hours before the race. Like this is her day job, and then she just comes back to do the race. So Catwoman goes into this Victorian lady's house and she starts like dusting for skin cells or whatnot. But she says like this room is super creepy because like it's so spacious, but everything is built for one. It's like a one-person bed and there's a photo album with no photos in it. But the really weird thing is over top the bed, there is a mask of a baby's face. And it's like, that seems like it could have some clues. So she picks it up. Cut back to the race. There's a random ass dude in a dune buggy, like a hippie looking guy, who Catwoman is just like, I hope that guy wins. And they're just like, why? You're 10-1 odds to win. Like the GCPD's even placing bets on you, hoping that you'll win. Just like, oh, I have my reasons. So then Catwoman uses her grappling hook to take down the Interpol helicopter. Turns out it was actually a fake that was being driven by Vice and Swindle, who were hired by Roulette in order to fix the race. And they fully admit to that and then just walk off into the desert. So then we cut back to the coroner's office, and the guy's name is Gilbright, by the way, the consultant. And Gilbright is basically like, oh, I'll tell you who hired me, Selena. It was this woman with a snake tattoo. And it's like, Roulette hired you? Why? And she's like, oh, she wanted evidence from the murder scene, but I wanted to solve the crime. She wanted me to bury it, though. And now I'm torn because I love this woman and I want to solve it for her. And Catwoman says, okay, well, here's a baggie of skin cells and here's a dead baby's mask. Use this to get clues. And he's like, where did you get this? And he's like, don't ask. That's my stuff. Don't ask. I'm just giving it to you and you better do the right thing with it. So then all of a sudden she gets a call from Alice Tesla, who says, hey, I made a supercar for you. Totally should be able to catch up to the bullet train. So we see the end of the race. They've caught up to the train. It seems that Mirror Master pulls ahead. So Catwoman hops on top of the train, and then Mirror Master makes a mirror, but it's an indestructible mirror, I guess, and the train just crashes into it and dead stops right before the finish line. So the cops show up, Alvarez and Keys, and they're ready to arrest Catwoman and Mirror Master, and just like, why? Well, we sped. What's so big about that? So they take away the weapons, and then they're like, yeah, Catwoman, we put 10-1 odds on you winning. Thanks for that. And she says, but I didn't win. I let that dude in the dune buggy win. And we see this random dude just chilling past the finish line. And so they run onto the train. They go to get Roulette. Roulette's not there, but she left her calling card, which is a full roulette wheel, mind you. And she's like, damn it, she's one step ahead of us. I'm going after Roulette next time. It's a 3. I don't like it. This is like, I hate this style of storytelling where it's like one character just saying the other one is like, oh, what happened next? And then they just recount the whole thing. But I hate it even more by the fact that, like, I hate both these stories. There is nothing redeemable in either the framing device or the story, like, of the corpse or whatever. Neither of these things are interesting, yet they are apparently intricately linked, and God, I hate this so much. This trade goes up to issue 34. So theoretically, I got 2 more issues, and then I'm hoping that Nocenti is off this run, because I just can't anymore. Larfleeze number 12, written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, art by Scott Kolins. Last issue, man, I don't know, it was like the setup to the whole big final thing of Nort and Larfleeze fighting together to take down the gods of Tuath Dan or whatever. So this issue picks up, this issue picks up with the 2 robots that we've been following, and one of the robots' wives, because they were having an affair, one of the robots' wives was embedded inside of this giant portal thing, and now it's super pissed off at the robots to the point where, like, it's asking for alimony, and one of the robots gets its head blown up. So we see that the battle against an army of robots, all being controlled by Sorrow, or Dirge of Sorrows, is being fought against Larfleeze, Nort, and Wanderer on 3 fronts. And they're all just blasting, doing whatever, trying to take out the robots. Dirge of Sorrows, comes in, attacks them, and the friggin' Wanderer, her entire bit here is just saying, my beloved, and then Larfleeze saying, stop calling me that. I'm not your beloved. And Larfleeze is honestly the voice of reason here, trying to get everybody to focus and like attack the robots. And in doing so, all the robots start piling in on him until finally we get this massive, huge orange explosion. And we see him now in like Super Saiyan mode. He's super pissed off. All the gods of Tuathan are just like, okay, what are we supposed to do about this pissed off monkey? And he's just like, for the last time, I am not a monkey. I am not a man. I am not a beloved. I am Larfleeze, and Larfleeze is Larfleeze. So he basically chews him out, just saying, like, you guys have tried to kill me again and again and again. You keep on failing, and, like, nothing you do is going to kill the Lord of the Orange Light. And Wanderer's like, yeah, that's right, my beloved. And he's just like, God damn it, I hate you so much. So at that point, the gods are like, okay, well, we'll come in, and our next blow will be fatal. But then immediately Larfleeze makes, like, a giant construct that just, like, is about to crush all of them. Just being like, you guys, I am going to give you my one warning here. Get off this planet, never give me trouble again, or I will kill all of you. Because what I'm willing to do is let you live in peace in a place of my choosing, and you never touch anything that belongs to Larfleeze. And all the gods are like, okay, how do we know what belongs to you? And Larfleeze is like, what belongs to me? Everything belongs to me. So we see Wanderer has got them all balled up, and she's in charge of figuring out where exactly they should go in terms of their exile. And the gods are like, oh, but you're our sister. You're going to treat us good, right? And she's like, yeah, totally. Just as good as you always treated me. And she's like, oh, God. So Nord at that point is like, all right, so I guess that's that then. And Larfleeze is like, yeah, totally. But then one of the robots comes up saying like, oh, Larfleeze, Green Lantern, one of you got to help. That giant portal thing that you guys made, or they made in order to trap you, the wife of my lover is in there. She's gone crazy, and she's going to blow up the whole planet via the portal. And Nort doesn't understand, so Larfleeze has to like break it down simply to him, and he's just like, are you sure that she's going to blow up the planet? Because it just sounds like she's asking for alimony from all of us. So Larfleeze talks to the portal saying like, hey, look, I'm the one who's in charge of this planet. You guys made me the king. You said that everything on this planet belongs to me, and therefore all the robots that you are absorbing belong to me, and I don't like that, so I want my stuff back. And Larfleeze takes the portal, puts rocket constructs onto it, and just blasts it out into space. And Larfleeze is like, well, that's that. So Nord is like, well, I mean, yes and no. And he's just like, why? And he's like, well, okay, hold on. First things first is that we cut over to where did Wanderer drop off the group? And it turns out, if you remember, there was that Council of 10 that was the only thing that the House of Tuathan was afraid of. She just dropped them off in front of them, and they said, like, we will decide your thing after we decide what we have for lunch, but we will put you in stasis until then. So Wanderer's like, yep, they'll take care of that. That'll be a few years where I don't have to worry about them at the minimum, and then, I'll get to plan my wedding to Larfleeze. So Nord basically is saying, like, okay, yeah, here's the thing. You're a terrorist, Larfleeze. You are actually, like, wanted by the Green Lantern Corps, so I'm going to have to take you in. But his ring stops him and says, you're too close to this case, Nort. I'm not letting you do this. And Nort's like, what do you mean I'm too close? And he says, Larfleeze is your relative. He is your 14th cousin twice removed. And Larfleeze's ring is just like, you just figured that out, Ring? Jesus, I had that pegged forever ago. And the rings start talking to each other. It's just like, oh, why didn't you say anything? It's like, because I hate this guy. Oh, yeah, I hate my guy, too. God, they're both such idiots. How do we ever get stuck with such lousy jobs? And Larfleeze just snaps at him, tells them both to shut the hell up. And then he looks at Norton. He's like, so you're my family? He's like, yeah, it looks like we're cousins. That's weird. And Larfleeze just basically keeps on getting closer and closer to Nord, just being like, you're my family. And Nord's like, 14th cousins, it's not that close. Family. So he puts his arm around Nord, just saying like, oh yeah, hey, look, I'm going to give you a great honor. Larfleeze is going to make you his sidekick. And he's just like, oh, well, I've always wanted to be a sidekick before. And then Larfleeze says, you know what? I feel like I'm forgetting something, but oh well, I'm sure I'll think of it. And as they leave the planet, we see Stargrave the butler, that all this story was about, is just sitting there in a pile of rubble, saying it's time for a career change. And that is Larfleeze. Let it never be said that Keith Giffen does not do whatever the hell he wants. I mean, this wasn't an awful book. Honestly, it's different than what Threshold was, but I think it's more in line with what the DC universe can be. You know, Threshold was an interesting story, but it didn't feel like Keith Giffen's strong suit. This felt more in that sort of area. By the end of it, I can't say I really cared about any of the characters anymore. Obviously, I don't think any of them really come back up except for Larfleeze every once in a while, and Nort, maybe. But Stargrave, the To It Dan stuff, that is in the deep pits of continuity nobody's going to revisit. So, all in all, the series was okay. I'd say this last issue was a bit weird in that it made Larfleeze have to be the straight man after everything that's happened, which is strange to say the very least, but I would still probably end up giving it like... I'm gonna give it a 7, but a lot of that is that it's the finale to the series, and I'm just kind of like happy that it didn't make me hate it by the end. Like I was always enduring it, but I never hated it. So yeah, I'll give this one a 7. It's not an awful book, but it is definitely one where you need to know what you're getting into going in, because otherwise you're not gonna like it. Red Lanterns number 32, written by Charles Soule, art by Jim Calafiore. So last issue, Atrocitus and the rest of the Red Lanterns, Guy Gardner mostly, came to a standstill and were like, all right, I guess this is it. We're going to go start a fight now. But they realized that he had Rancor, so that's the thing they're after now. So we pick up and they're looking down at the planet that they figure Atrocitus is at. And it's like, okay, look, Kara and the judge, you two stay out of this. We're not dealing with you. You're not part of this fight. And the judge is like, my whole point is to show up here and watch, so I'm going to be there. And Kara's like, and I want to punch stuff. And she's like, fine, whatever. So they keep Zulius Zoxox up in the ship and just being like, look, we're going to hit him by surprise. We're going to do what we can. Even if he knows we're coming, he doesn't know what we're packing. Let it rip. And so Zilius starts up the Red Lantern drive on the ship and just starts firing down massive energy beams. So the crew make their way down and they find a little hut that they left Rancor in. And Blaze is like, yeah, no, he's here. But like, something's weird, man, because he knew we would be coming. Why aren't there any traps or anything? He's like, I get it and I understand and I agree. But if he's in there, we got to go get him. So they land next to the hut and then they see Rancor is just chained up, just completely numb. He's totally reverted back to being a mindless Red Lantern. So back over on Yzmalt, Atrocitus, Dexter, and the couple other of Red Lanterns that they have made have just come back, and they've looked at like all the statues and stuff that the Red Lanterns have made, and he's just like, this is freaking heresy, man. They don't understand. This is stupid. And they look up and they see the statue of Ratchet and just like, okay, well, Ratchet was cool. I'm not worried. Ratchet was all right, but he was led astray by Guy Gardner's stupid freaking ideas. And the other Red Lanterns, who are still a little bit mindless, are just like, what do you mean? Like, give us purpose. Tell us what this is all about. And he's just like, look, all of this, the Guy Gardner taking over the Red Lanterns, is just a test by fate, or whatever you want to call it, to see if I, Atrocitus, am worthy of taking back the Red Lanterns by making them stronger and purer, by casting out these heathens. And God, I'm gonna do it. So he goes up to the statue of Guy Gardner and he's like, it actually does kind of look like him. And there's spits all over it, melting his face off. Just being like, all right, tear all the statues down, except for Ratchet's, because Ratchet was cool. So we then cut back over to Rancor, and Kara's just like, I'm sorry, you helped put me in the lake to make me not crazy. Are you saying that Atrocitus can make people crazy again? And he's like, yeah, seems like he can. That's something new we learned. So Guy takes responsibility. He's like, yeah, look, this is all my fault because of going against Atrocitus, as I humiliated him. I did all that stuff. All of this is on me. And Bleeze, caring for Rancor, takes off his shackles, to which Rancor then immediately just explodes with red energy. And Scalix is like, what did you do? And just like, oh, he shouldn't have been shackles. Just be like, I beg to differ, man. So immediately Kara comes in, throws a few punches, tries to keep Rancor down, but he's better with his constructs than she is, so he's able to, like, pull her away. Guy gets involved, starts trying to beat away Rancor, looks to the judge being like, hey, you want to help at all? Because you're like super powerful. And judge is just like, no, I'm still just observing. This doesn't really involve me. And he's just like, you think Rancor's going to stop the moment that he kills all of us? Nah, man, you're next. But Guy gets blasted and Rancor starts unleashing his energy. Back with Atrocitus, he reaches over to the Lake of Rage and Dextar's like, so we're going to take back our planet, right? And he's just like, nah, this planet sucks now. It's full of posers. I don't want anything to do with this planet. But I am going to do something to the Lake of Rage. And he puts his hand in it. And he's like, yeah, no, they're going to bring him back here. They're going to try to make him, like, intelligent again. They're going to put him in the lake. I am going to corrupt it. So therefore it will not do that. And it's only going to make things worse for them. And then he looks over at the power battery and he says, like, let's finish this. So we go back over. Bleeze is talking to Zilius up on the ship, being like, hey, I need you to fire the laser down at 60% on my position when I say so. And Zilius is like, that's going to kill you. What are you doing? And she's like, don't worry about it. I'll be fine. And she goes up to Rancor and is just like, Rancor, you saved me. Even when I didn't want to save myself, you saw the best of me. I care about you, Rancor, and I don't want to see you like this. And Rancor just smirks and is about to start attacking, and she's just like, all right, well, I don't have a choice. Gives him a big hug and then says, fire on my mark. And so the laser incinerates them both, but they're not dead. They're nearly dead, but they're not dead, to the point where Guy's like, nah, no, the rings aren't flying away, so they must still be alive. Let's see if we can pull them up and get them healed. So they all get back up to the ship, and then they head back to Gizmalt, and when they get there, the place is wrecked, and Atrocitus nowhere to be seen. And Guy's like, oh, okay, this is what he meant by, like, we know what war was and when it started. So he tells Scalix and Zox to figure out, like, a way to help Rancor. Meanwhile, he pulls Kara aside, and Kara's like, what's up? We gonna go punch something? And he's like, I want you to go away. And Kara's like, excuse me? And he's like, look. The thing I got going on with Atrocitus, that's a thing that I caused. That's my own stuff going on. You are an innocent kid, and you shouldn't be involved in that because Atrocitus will actually murder you, and you don't deserve that. And she's like, I'm stronger than all of you. And he's like, right, stronger. And also, look, we're kind of just done with the Red Lantern thing for you now, so we just need you to leave. But, like, that's metatextually. In the text itself, you're capable of more. So I want you to go to Mogo, and I want you to talk to Hal Jordan, and he'll figure out a way to get that ring off you, because you don't deserve that anymore, whatever. And she gives Guy a hug, and, you know, they share a tender moment and whatnot. And then that's all picked up in Supergirl 32, which unfortunately came out before this issue and kind of spoiled the whole thing. Anyway, Guy flies back over to Scalix and Zilius, and they're just like, okay, is there any way that we can remake the battery? And Scalix is like, Ratchet would know, but Ratchet's dead, so no, we don't have any idea. So at that point, Guy just doubles down, just saying, like, all right, well, Kara's gone. We're gonna take down Atrocitus, even if it means we all go down with him. So that's where that ends. It's fine. It's good. It's starting technically a new arc. This is starting what's called Atrocities, part 1 of 4, I think. But yeah, I understand from the meta sense of, like, why Supergirl couldn't stay in this book forever. I get it. But from the same viewpoint, this felt really not it. This didn't feel like a good enough reason to say, like, okay, Supergirl, we're about to start the toughest battle of our life where all of us might die. You're our strongest warrior. We need you to leave. It's like, all right, come on. But beyond that, it's a fine enough issue. It's all right. I think that the only thing that feels super weird about it for me is Bleeze. I don't know. Her character's gone through some weird stuff recently where I'm not entirely sure where she's like landing emotionally, and it's just, I don't know. I want them to find some stability with her, even if it is something where like, oh, maybe she actually cares about Rancor. Who knows? But it just seems a little bit, I don't know, in the middle for me. So I'm gonna give this one I'll give it a 7. It's all right. It's not great, but it's certainly worth reading. Sinestro number 3, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Dale Eaglesham, and Rags Morales. So last issue, we had Sinestro basically retaking the core, restructuring it, and saying, hey, anybody who doesn't like me, come out to this empty field, and we're gonna just do a little bit of shooting. So we go to somewhere in the armpit of the galaxy, and we see a bunch of Yellow Lanterns have met up in like a tiny bar, and they're just like, look, we don't care about Sinestro's freaking moralistic whatevers. We did this because we wanted to beat the crap out of some Green Lanterns, and screw it. We're just not going to follow Sinestro's orders. And as they're talking about this, they're staying way far away from the Sinestro Corps because they know they can be heard there. But then all of a sudden, this group of people show up who are from that Church of No Emotion, whatever they're called, and they show up, and it's just like, hey, we followed your yellow light here. You spread fear. The Pale Bishop has sentenced you to be made pure. And so it seems like there's a fight between them, but we don't get to see it, and the Holy Inquisition begins. So out in the planet where Sinestro, where Archillo was set up, they're moving everything over to the new prison planet where Sinestro is picking up at. And we have Sornik come out, and she's like, hey, how's it going? I guess you guys found a prison planet to live on? I mean, that is where you deserve to be, Sinestro. You deserve to be in prison. And Sinestro's like, yeah, okay, whatever. How are your patients? Are they good? Like, are the rest of the Corrigarians cool? And she's like, yeah, sure, come on. So they lead back deeper in the cave, and the Corrigarians are all sitting there talking to each other. And when Sinestro walks up, they all just freeze. They're all just like, Jesus Christ, it's Sinestro. And immediately they start like yelling, like, why did you bring us here? We fled because of you and whatnot. And Sinestro's like, I'm sorry, do you not understand what would have happened here? You guys were put into a stasis tube, and you would have been launched into space as a sacrifice for a crazy ass religious cult, and I saved you. So Christ, man, have some freaking gratitude. And one of the women stands up. Her name is, God, this is Umaral Jarta. I don't know what I'll come down on that. But she stands up. She's like, look, it's only like 4 or 5 of us here, but I will speak for Corrigar as long as I am the most qualified to do so. And so Sinestro's like, I'm sorry, you'll speak for Corrigar? Hello, it's me. And she's like, look, the only reason my people survived, the only reason we were in those stasis pods to begin with is because we were fleeing the planet when you were controlling it. Like, yes, you quote unquote saved us, but you have to understand the only reason we were put in that position is because of you. And at that point, Sinestro just kind of like storms off and just being like, you know what? I don't have time to coddle you guys. I'm gonna go save some more Corrigarians, and maybe they'll be a little bit more grateful, you friggin' dicks. So at that point, Sornik's just like, hey, look, you can't expect them to trust you, not all at once. That's not the way this plays out. And she points out, just being like, look, for the record, I think you're a narcissistic monster. And Sinestro's like, well, yeah, you're my daughter after all. And she's like, no, I am not. You will never call me that again. And just like, yeah, well, here's the thing. You're not my prisoner. I hope you understand that. You're free to go whenever. She's like, I don't have any juice in my ring. What do you mean I'm free to go? I literally can't leave. And he calls up Lyssa, the witch lady, and she has a Green Lantern power battery. And she's like, what? How did you get this? And he's like, I did it on the up and up. No, nobody died. I'll say that much. But yeah, charge up. You can leave if you want to. I'm not stopping you. And she's like, it's not that simple. You've got Corrigarians here. They're going to need help and care. And yeah, I'm this isn't for you. This is for that. And Sinestro's like, yeah, okay, totally. So At this point, we see Arquillo is shouting out commands, saying like, "Oh, you're going to be going on this rescue mission because that's what Sinestro demands, and we're all doing that." And the one dude, what's his name? Des Trevius is like, "Wow, Arquillo, you really bent the knee super quick there. I thought just the other day you were like, oh, we're never going to obey Sinestro, and look at you now." And the other guy, Romit Rue, is like, yeah, but no, seriously, we should listen to Sinestro because he's like awesome. And also we see what happens to people who turn against him. And Romit Rue's like, what do you mean? What happens to people who turn against him? Sinestro's like, nothing. And we shouldn't be talking about that, should we, Des Trevius? So at that point, they're all going on a mission to grab some Korrigarians, and Sorenik inserts herself. She's like, look, I'm going along. You can't stop me. And Des Trevius is like, the hell we can't. You're a Green Lantern. And Sinestro jumps in saying like, no, you're going to take her along. She's a medic. She'll help you out. We're not enemies with the Greens anymore. That was never our thing. We are here to instill order in the universe. So the whole group flies off to this planet called Moose, where a bunch of Korrigarians are being sold because Korrigarians are rare, and they are either can be a delicacy or a slave force or whatever they want. So a bunch of people are bidding on them out in the audience. It gets up to 10,000 credits. Then a hand goes up saying 250. And then someone says, or the bidder guy, the head of the auction, is just like, I'm sorry, maybe you misheard. We said 10,000. 250 doesn't make sense going either way there. And Sinestro, who was the one who raised his hand, says, no, I count about 250 people in this audience who will live if you let those Korrigarians go now. Anybody got a problem with that deal? And there's this one lady who, she looks the most pompous out of them all, and she lowers her fan, and she's like, kill them all. So, of course, a fight breaks out. It was never not going to, but the Sinestro Corps just murders everyone. There is nobody left alive because that is the point they're trying to make. And all the Korrigarians are rounded up by Sorenik, and Sorenik's like, don't worry, we're not going to let anybody get hurt. And she looks out at what the Yellow Lanterns are doing, and she's like, you're not going to get hurt. So Sinestro comes in, he just extends his hand, being like, I will take you all to safety. And they immediately recoil. They're like, Jesus, now, oh God. And so Sorenik jumps in saying like, I will take care of you. Nothing's going to happen to you. So Sinestro and his group go off. They're greeted by someone else while Sorenik takes care of the remaining Korrigarians. And we see that it is the group of the religious whatever, saying like, hello, we are here, and the Pale Bishop says that you must submit to our Holy Inquisition. So next issue, they fight against the Church of the No Emotions, or whatever the hell they're called. I like this one. I think it does a good job of introspection here, not only of Sinestro's stuff, which I feel like the whole series is going to be, but I like how Sorenik has to make these choices as well of, okay, I don't want to be here, but like my do no harm and trying to help people sort of stuff is basically forcing me to stay here as the unwilling medic of the Yellow Lantern Corps. And I like that as a development because it gives a lot of pushback. With this group full of monsters, Sinestro being a dictator himself, it's nice to have someone who will be the moral sounding board. Beyond that, it's just a good thing overall. I think the church stuff has potential, but we're still kind of in the early phases of that, so we'll see what all their threat really comes out to be. But I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I enjoyed it, I liked reading it, and yeah, it's a good book. Aquaman number 32, written by Geoff Parker, art by Paul Pelletier. So last issue, we had a little mini crossover with Swamp Thing, and also Mera went down to try to figure out who was attacking Aquaman, trying to assassinate him, and got caught up in her own stuff. So we see that Batman is dropping Aquaman off after the events of Swamp Thing and whatnot. And he's like, you should be pretty close here, Aquaman. And he's like, yeah, but you're like miles away, Batman. And he gets in the water, and Aquaman's like, he's only like 6 miles away. I don't know how he got so close. So as Aquaman's swimming back, we see like the little telepathic signals coming out from some other source and hitting him. And then we see whatever creature is doing this, a horrible squid-looking man, says like, where are you? There you are, the Killer King. So then we cut 2 hours ago, and if you remember, the Trident base was setting up that one dude who got like attacked by sharks. They were just doing a whole bunch of like weird chimera operations on him, and as the main bad scientist guy tries to like boot him up, Dr. Orson, he gets caught up in a bunch of tentacles, dragged down into the tank, and is easily killed. So Dr. Shin calls security and basically like, there's something here, man, we need help. So they come in, guns blazing. Immediately this thing busts out through the glass and we get a full page spread of it, and it's just a horrible, I'm gonna say Squid Man, but like, you have to understand Squid Man and like Creature from the Black Lagoon mixed together sort of thing. So all the security guards who are in the room start firing at it. It just jumps after them, puts its tentacles on its face, and then just rips them off their bones. His suckers are that powerful, and he's just like, oh geez, all right. So they're firing at him. He spews out some sort of acidic breath that melts off a couple more of their faces, and once everybody's sufficiently dead, he goes and he grabs Dr. Shin, and he's like, what am I? And Shin calls out for Aquaman, and he's just like, who are you calling for? Who can save you? And at that point, he's like reading Dr. Shin's mind, and he's like, there, I know he's out there. So he busts out through the window of Trident Base, and it starts flooding, and it seems like the scientists are going to die, but we don't get any clarification on that. So cutting back over to Mara's story down in the Underrealm, 1 hour ago, we see all the Underrealm guys are like, man, we were going to launch another attack to attack you, Mara, but like, you showed right up to us, so screw it, we're just going to kill you now. Anything you want to say? And she's like, yeah, surrender now. And he's like, all right, well, that's funny. Anyway, attack. And so they all launch in. Tula and Mara immediately just start attacking. The main scientist guy is just chilling. He doesn't want any part of this. So they all start launching attacks against them. And Mara's like, I thought for sure these guys would be tougher. Like, I'm just wiping the floor with them. And Tula's like, yeah, there's a reason that I didn't bring them up to my guard. Like, they're just like stupid militiamen sort of thing. And all the other people in the Underrealm are seeing this fight go out, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, I thought that Mara was supposed to be like weak and a coward and was just manipulating others. Like, she's wiping the floor with them. That's not at all what the rumors I heard were. So eventually one of them manages to get a hold on her. Tula comes in, immediately knocks them off their giant crab, and then gives Mara the opportunity to use her water powers to just throw them up and down against the seafloor numerous times until pretty much they're all knocked out. So she grabs hold of their leader, and it's like entraps him in a water thing, saying like, all right, I'm done with listening to you. Tell me how your group is organized and like everything about it that I need to know. And he's like, ha, you'll never get me to talk. I have this inner, what is it? Strength, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I have dignity, integrity. I'm not going to spill it to you. And she's like, all right, well, we'll see about that. Puts a black bag over his head, unveils it in front of Topo, the giant monster kraken thing, and says, like, Topo here is feeding time. And I hear that he swallows things whole, and then you're slowly digested over tons of years. And it's just the most horrific thing available. So, yeah, I'm going to keep on feeding you and your soldiers one by one until somebody cracks. And he says, like, all right, yep, I'll tell you everything you need to know. So Aquaman at that point, he's going back home. We're back to now. And he sees a giant squid like way up higher than it should be. He's like, hey, little guy, what are you doing up here? Something wrong? And the squid starts attacking Aquaman. He's like, whoa, hold on. And he starts trying to use his telepathic stuff to control the squid, but the squid's not responding. And then all of a sudden, the squid expels him into a bunch of like very harmful jellyfish, and he's like, geez Christ, what is wrong with you all? And then like some giant toothed fish comes up and start biting his arms, and then a blue whale just like tackles him down into the seafloor, and he calls up to them just being like, I know that you can hear me. What is going on, guys? Why won't you obey my commands? And as they all get closer, Aquaman can hear a voice emanating from them saying like, oh, they obey not the king of fishmen, but the king of creatures. And Aquaman's like, okay, this is supposed to be like a one-way radio thing. Who the hell are you that you're managing to get thoughts out of the squid and such? And we see on the underbelly of the whale, I'm not sure if he's actually there, if it's just like a telepathic sort of thing, but it's Coombs, the soldier guy, the chimera, and he's just like, well, I am all of them and none of them. I am something else. I am going to take all of you and make you part of the chimera. So, yeah. I mean, it's a great setup for a new villain. I'm interested in it. It does a great job of making him menacing, shows that his powers are on par with at least part of Aquaman's here, so I'm down with it. I'm interested in seeing how it goes. I think the Mera stuff is interesting, but right now it's not the more interesting part. I think that Aquaman's side is still just a little bit more of what I'm looking for here. But there's still plenty of room to improve. I'm sure that they can manage to find a way to make it intriguing for me. So all in all, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I actually really think it's a solid book, and I'm looking forward to next week, or next month's issue, I should say. The Flash number 32, written by Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, art by Brett Booth. So last issue, there's a Future Flash storyline, and then there's the normal Flash storyline. Future Flash is going back in time. Normal Flash is trying to relate to Wally and also solve a crime. So I'm going to focus first on the Future Flash storyline. Just know that they are intercut with each other, and it's not just a one-for-one. We show 12 years from now in Central City. There's a doctor who's like, oh yeah, you got stage 4 bone cancer, you're like minutes from death, and yeah, you should have realized that when you messed with your physiology by melding a freeze gun to your DNA. And so the doctor walks out, and we see that the person dying is, of course, Captain Cold. So in a blaze of lightning appearing in the room is Flash, and he's like, Leonard, you looked better. So we get the Flash is there, and he's like, look, I don't even know if you can hear me right now. I know you didn't expect me to be the one to visit you here at the end, but like, I gotta explain to you what's going on, man. There's time slips. Time slips are just happening like every once in a while. It'll be like a fraction of a second for me, but it'll be like so much longer in actual time. And I've realized that it's the Speed Force, man. It was because like I've gone back through time, and Grodd has gone back through time, and Daniel West went back through time. All of this stuff, going back through time, that's what causes it. I messed up the Speed Force, and as such, I am going to just purposely travel back in time. I'm going to go back to the youngest version of me, and then I'm just going to kill me. I'm just going to kill myself, and I'm not going to let this happen, okay? It'll be for someone else to deal with, because I am so guilty about everything that I've let slip by. And so, yeah, he looks up at the clock. He sees it's like about the time where time of death was announced. And so he grabs Leonard's hand, and Leonard wakes up long enough to see Flash. He's like, I'm here. I'm not going to let you die alone. And then Leonard passes away. And as the heart monitor flatlines, Doctor comes back in, and Flash rushes out. And he's just like, Jesus, not even you supervillains can die normally. So the Doctor apparently had some sort of connection to Captain Cold, something where her son was on a field trip the day that she turned the river into ice. So yeah, she has no mourning for Captain Cold, but we see Captain Cold is seemingly at peace, and that's where that story ends. Anyway, the main Flash story. So we get that Barry's on his way to figure out more stuff about who's stealing these weapons during the Forever Evil event, and he gets a call from Patty, and Patty's basically like, hey man, you keep running out, and I just, I want some time for us. Can we talk? And she's just like, oh yeah, totally. I will definitely be by, but don't worry. I'm just going to take care of this one thing, and then no problem. It's in the suburbs, so it'll totally be safe. But as he gets there, he sees a house that is like fused into the tree from outside, and he's like, that's weird. So he runs in, and we see that this homeowner is being just like morphed into this grotesque like armchair sort of position by this guy named Merge. And Flash is like, Merge, I thought you retired. And turns out Merge's ability is he's got a pair of gloves that anything he holds in the left hand and anything he holds in the right hand, merge the two objects together. And it's horrific and grotesque, and Flash is just like, oh, well, you should know better, Merge, I'm too fast. So at that point, he's like, oh, well, I'm not going to try to grab you then. I'm just going to try to kill you by messing with the floor. So he like puts one to the wall and one to the floor, and that merges them together into this weird like Dolly hellscape looking thing. And finally, Merge manages to run up the stairs, and he puts one hand on the stairs and one hand on the ceiling. And that is apparently enough to like cause the house to just collapse in on itself. Merge manages to escape, but Flash doesn't seem to until the very last second, where he's like, haha, Merge, here's a few things you didn't know. 1, those were locked up in evidence until you stole them, so I know you're not Merge. 2, the real Merge was right-handed, you're clearly a lefty. And 3, Merge never tried to come at me one-on-one, so you're definitely not him. And he's like, all right, well, I bet the Merge also didn't have this. And he pulls out a gun and shoots near Barry, and it turns out that it is the gun of a guy named Gravitor, who makes a gravity gun, and he like pins down Barry under ultra gravity. He's like, haha, you still don't know anything because I managed to get out of this before when Gravitor used it on me. And he's like, yeah, well, I can also just do this. And he flips it into reverse and makes the gravity significantly lighter, and Barry just goes flying up and away against his will. So as Barry's flying up, he's just like, okay, all right, got to figure out how to do this. So he does like the air turbine thing with his arms and propels himself back down to the ground. And as he lands, he's super out of it. He's just like, all right, this is embarrassing. I don't want any of this. Meanwhile, Patty pulls up just being like, hey, we put a GPS in your outfit, remember? And when I saw you were like several hundred feet above the ground, I decided I had to come and drive and see what that was about. And she's like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's a whole thing. So she starts bringing Barry over to the car, and she's like, look, I think you've done enough heroing for today. Let's just relax. Like, we can't, don't worry about going out anymore. And he's just like, oh, wait, but I've got tickets to the game tonight. I've got to go to that. And she's like, oh, perfect. I'd love to go to the game with you. And she's like, oh, well, it's not a date thing. It's Wally West, the nephew of Iris West. Like, him and I are going to go out to this game. And immediately Patty's like, Iris West and her nephew are going to a game with you, and you can't make any time for me. And she like pushes Barry away, and he starts to float away a little bit. He grabs onto a nearby tree and just be like, oh, you got to understand, like, I'm helping this kid grow up. Like, he doesn't have any parents or anything. I'm trying to be a good like parental figure. And she's like, look, not now. And she just gets back in her car and like drives away. So Barry listens on the radio. He's already going to be late to the game, so he makes it there as fast as he can. And we see Wally's just not enjoying himself. Iris goes to get a drink, and Barry's like, so, this your first baseball game? And he's like, yeah, because baseball sucks. And he's like, what do you mean baseball sucks? And he's like, it's not fast enough. And it was like, trust me, kid, not everything needs to be fast. You don't want everything to go fast, because then you might, like, miss some stuff passing you by. And they get, like, right in each other's faces. He's, like, trying to make this point, when all of a sudden, crack from home plate. It's a home run, and even Wally gets up. He's super excited about it. And Iris comes back to see this, and she's like, oh, hey, I miss anything cool? And they smirk at each other, and they look like they're enjoying the game. So, all in all, decent little moment. Beyond that, no, I like the Future Flash stuff. I think it's solid there in terms of we're making him not just this, murderous maniac who's about to get justice no matter what. He's stopping by and just being next to Captain Cold in his time of need. Like, I like that. It's a humanizing thing. Counteract that point with the Patty and Iris stuff going on. Like, I get it. I understand that in the end game, Iris is like the one, but Patty didn't deserve this. I don't think so, at least. And then on top of it, you got the mystery of like, who is this guy? Why does he have these 4 different villains' weapons and whatnot? I don't know. I'm mildly interested in that, but I think everything else going on is far more interesting. I am curious how long we're going to go until Future Flash actually gets back to current time, because I thought that was going to be like 2 issues and then it's like, okay, and now we'll fight. But I don't know. I think we might actually have like a little bit of time before he ends up actually getting back here. So I'm going to say this is... I'll give it a 7.5. I enjoyed it. I think it's solid. I'm looking forward to the next issue. It's just not quite cracking great. And I do have to, of course, critique the art. It's not the best, being that Brett Booth and all. But 7.5 is nothing to snuff at. Justice League number 31, written by Geoff Johns, art by Doug Mahnke. So last issue, Lex Luthor said, pretty please, can I join the Justice League? And everyone said no. We had him figure out Batman's secret identity and show up at Bruce Wayne's mansion. And we also had the new receiver of Power Ring, which is Jessica Cruz. So we open up with Jessica, and she is making her way through her apartment, which of course is stocked up with all this food and canned goods and stuff like that. And the Ring's talking to her, just being like, hey, I picked you to annihilate the world. How's that sound? And she's like, oh, yeah, you know what? Sounds great. Love the fact that the world would not be around anymore. But could you just give me like 1 minute? And the Ring's like, are you trying to get away from me? Look, I get it. You were attacked. The people who attacked you are still out there, and that made you agoraphobic. And you are unwilling to leave your home in the years since. And she's like, yeah, no, I know my history, and I'm one of the few people who knows how dangerous the world is. And so she pulls out a gun and just like, well, I've managed to survive through all of it, and I'll survive through you too. And the Ring's like, now Jessica. And then she just shoots the Ring, and the Ring's like, oh, okay, well, this could have gone much easier. And it throws itself onto her hand, and she screams out in pain. So cut to Wayne Manor. And Bruce is just sitting in the foyer with Lex Luthor sharing a drink. And Bruce is like, that's crazy that you think I'm Batman. And Lex is like, all right, but like, can we drop the facade? Like, you're definitely Batman. He's like, oh, Lex, is this trying to make a deal with Wayne Enterprises? I tell you, man. And he's just like, okay, look, here's the thing. I need you to drop the charade because whatever the crime syndicate was running from could be coming to us next, and I need you to be united with me in getting the Justice League prepared for that. And Bruce is like, oh, saving the world, that is good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a date with a model and an opera and other things rich people do. So he starts walking out, and then Lex is like, all right, well, I'm going to have to prove that you're Batman. And he pulls out a gun. That's just the recurring motif of this book. And he aims it at Bruce. And he's just like, look, when I walked in here, I felt a draft. And I know that, like, you're hiding a secret. And I'm going to find out what it is. And Bruce, he's just like, are you crazy? And it's just like, look, I know you're not bulletproof. I'm not going to do anything like that. But we're going to find out what your secrets are. And then Alfred comes in, pulls out a gun, and aims it at Lex Luthor. And he's just like, you need to get out of my house. And immediately, it's a Mexican standoff here. Bruce manages to leap up, attack Lex, while Alfred manages to try to push the gun away. The gun manages to aim towards the grandfather clock, and Lex shoots the gun, which has an explosive tip, and blows up the grandfather clock, revealing the stairway down to the Batcave behind it. And Lex is like, all right, let's start this conversation one more time. So then we go up to the Watchtower where Shazam and Cyborg are just hanging out. And Shazam's just bored out of his mind. He's just like, is there a ping pong table? Is there a swimming pool? Do we have an Xbox? And Cyborg's like, I'm kind of just my own Xbox. He's just like, that's awesome. Can we play? And Cyborg's like, dude, you want to be part of the Justice League? I get it. It's boring a lot of the time on watch duty, but like, you do still need to treat this with seriousness. It is still a job. And like, hey, you've got magic. Maybe that could help us do the job easier. And he's like, I don't really know how my magic works, but yeah, sure, we'll give it a shot. So he pulls up his hood and he's like, all right, powers of Shazam, Alakazam. And all of a sudden he summons the thing that he wants for the Justice League, which is a ping pong table. And so he picks up the paddle with Cyborg. He's just like, well, I mean, we may as well play a game. So over at LexCorp, we have a limo pulling up holding Leonard Snart, a.k.a. Captain Cold, and they let him up and say, like, oh, yes, Mr. Luthor's covered everything for your trip. He's waiting for you upstairs. And Mercy Graves meets him downstairs. They make their way through security. Security officer's like, do you have a weapon on you, sir? And he's like, yeah, my cold gun. He's like, oh, freeze, you're going to have to... Starts going off on him. Mercy Graves is like, excuse me, this is Captain Cold. And immediately everybody's like, oh, Captain Cold, the one who saved the day, the one who fought alongside Lex Luthor. Oh my God, can I get your picture? My autograph for a kid? And Leonard's like, sure. So he's not used to all that. As they get up to the top floor, Mercy's basically like, hey, look, here's the thing. We just need to run a few tests on you. It's standard for any LexCorp employees. And immediately Leonard's like, are you giving me a job? It's just like, yeah, totally, if you want it. So they run some tests, and then Mercy says something about running the blood work because Lex is looking for something for Project Wannabe. Beats me what that's about. So we cut back over to Lex and Bruce, and Bruce has dropped the charade, and Lex is basically like, okay, look, yes, I followed, it was you, Nightwing dying when we got his identity. Yeah, no, I just followed straight to you. I totally know that it's you now. So are you going to invite me down to your cave? And he's like, no, I am not. He's like, all right, fair enough. Look, this isn't blackmail. I just want you to do exactly what I say and don't go against me. He's like, that sounds like blackmail. And his thing is that he wants him to help him get into the Justice League so that they can build a better Justice League, so that they can be prepared for whatever this next threat coming in is. And Batman's like, dude, I don't need you to do that. Look, have you ever heard of the story of the frog and scorpion? And Lex is like, yes, I've heard the story of the frog and the scorpion. The frog swims across the river. The scorpion says, hey, bring me with. And then when they're halfway across, scorpion stings the frog and they both drown. And like, it is his nature. That's the thing. And Bruce is like, that's not my version of it. In my version of it, when they get halfway across, a bat swoops down, takes the scorpion off the frog to save it, and then eats it alive. I'm not letting you do whatever you want with the Justice League, Lex. Get the hell out of my house. So Lex leaves, and Alfred's like, hey, man, if you ever need me to drop a fellow, you just say so. And Bruce is like, thanks, Alfred. I'll keep that in mind. So Superman and Wonder Woman call in, and they're like, hey, we just got a huge surge of like emerald energy. We think it might be the power ring. We're going to go check it out. And Batman's like, yeah, sounds good. I'll be there soon. By the way, I'm going to need your help with Lex Luthor in a few because he knows some stuff. So walking through somewhere in Oregon, Jessica Cruz, now Power Ring, with all these demonic-looking Green Lantern entities just eating and killing people around, causing huge explosions. Meanwhile, she's shouting out like, everyone get away from me! I'm dangerous! Go! So they're all trying to run, and then the Ring saying like, oh, you're mine, you're going to help me burn this world to the ground. And she basically is interrupted by a group saying like, oh, we're here to help you, young lady. And turns out it's the Doom Patrol. The Doom Patrol is a thing. I think we got a hint of that last issue. I vaguely remember that being around. Anyway, yeah, Doom Patrol's here. So, I like it. I think it's a good issue. It does have like a strangely large amount of, I don't want to say comedic beats, because the comedic beats are simply like the Cyborg Shazam part, but with how many people just are pulling guns on each other, just page after page after page, it got kind of funny. So yeah, overall, it's a solid issue. I enjoyed it. I'll give it an 8. I think it's a great first appearance of Power Ring here. Jessica Cruz Power Ring obviously sets up an interesting dynamic of, you know, she's being held captive basically, and we get the Doom Patrol out of it. So I'll give it a solid 8. I enjoyed it. Secret Origins number 3, written by various writers and artists because it is an anthology. This time we are covering Green Lantern, Batwoman, and Red Robin. So first up is Green Lanterns, written by Robert Venditti and art by Martin Coccolo. And we pick up with young child Hal watching the explosion of his father's plane crashing. And he's like, I watched my hero die, doing the thing that I found him so heroic for. So yeah, it messed me up a little bit. And they go over to the graveyard and they show his older brother, Jack. You know, he was angry. He became the man of the house and he did what he had to do. His younger brother, Jim, he may have been too young to remember it. He just may have forgotten. And his mother was always praying whenever her husband went out into the field. So she's more at this point just praying that none of her kids ever go into it. But of course, little Hal, he immediately goes into the Air Force and he takes out these planes for joyrides. So we see him doing that, and one of the captains or whatever is just like, oh, this is just a training run. You gotta take it easy, Hal. That's an order. And Hal's like, sorry, can't hear you, engines. So he's flying around. He's going nuts. But of course, he's not big on authority. And he does straight up say that, like, no matter what my dad did, I would do that. Like, if he died as a race car driver, I would race cars. Like, it's all about facing my fear. That's the whole thing. Like, I'm afraid of dying like that, and therefore I run headfirst into it. So, like I said, he's bad with authority. He punches out his major at one point, and that gets him put on fixing up planes. When one day, a little bit ball of green energy comes at him and says, Hal Jordan, come with me. And it just takes him away over to an identical wreckage of Abin Sur's ship, and he sees inside and he sees Abin Sur dying, and he's like, oh, I wonder whose father that is. So he goes in, and Abin Sur is like, hey, I got a Green Lantern ring. I require someone with a lot of willpower. Are you cool? And he's like, yeah, I'm cool. So he passes the ring off to Hal, and Hal immediately is told, like, you know, you can do anything you imagine with the ring. And so he takes it on a joyride. He makes some giant, like, space bikes and whatnot. But, of course, then he's told they are a police force. So he's brought up into the police station. He's put back into authority again. And he's like, all right, I did it. Like, I had to do what I had to do. I've enjoyed myself at the very least. But then, of course, Sinestro was one member of the Corps. He went evil, and then it was a big battle between the Yellow Lanterns and the Green Lanterns and whatnot, stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, well, the Green Lantern's always going to be there to serve and protect. And then we see he still spends some time down on Earth. He occasionally calls in favors to get back into a plane because that is where he feels most alive. And everything is all about facing his fears for him. It's all about running headlong into it, not worrying about what happens afterwards. So we see him dismounting out of a plane, flying back into the air, and saying, like, everyone feels fear. It's totally normal. It's just how you react to it. So next up, we have Batwoman's story, written by Jeremy Haun, art by Trevor McCarthy. We open up with young Kate, who was in the room when her mother was killed, and her sister as well, theoretically, on her 12th birthday. And we see later on she opens up a present from her mom, theoretically for that same birthday, I think. And it's a little Matryoshka doll, like the Russian nesting dolls. She goes downstairs, sees her dad is crying, and there's like a whole happy birthday thing set up nearby. So years later, she's at West Point. She's announced to her superior officer that she's gay, and she just sets down her ring and walks out. And she meets back up with her father, and the father's like, what do you mean you got kicked out of West Point? And they're like, I didn't want to lie, and I was gay. And it's just like, all right, well, that's honorable, and you kept your integrity, so yeah, your mom would have been proud too. So later on, Kate's outside a bar. She's calling up a friend, and then all of a sudden she gets jumped by a dude who swings like a lead pipe at her. She manages to kick the guy down, slam his face against the wall. She's like, I'm a soldier, you hear me? I'm a soldier. The guy runs off, and as Kate turns around, Batman's standing there, and Batman's like, that was cool. Don't make a habit of that. Bye. And then he flies off, and she's like, I know what I want to do with my life. So sometime later, she's going around the Gotham train yard, beating up some guys with guns. And her father finds out about it, and he's like, you got to stop. Like, this isn't good. You're not a vigilante. And she's like, no, I finally know what I want to do, and I want to, do something like this. I found out my own way to serve. And he's like, all right, fine, but I'm getting you, like, actual training. And so she goes around. She gets training in Berlin, Japan, China, Kazakhstan, like all these different stuff, until finally she's able to come back. 2 years later, her father set up a whole secret base thing going on, just being like, yeah, well, I've got you everything you're going to need, and we're going to make sure that you do this right. And unveils the Batwoman costume, and he's like, you want to try it on? She's like, hell yeah. So we see some of her early adventures. She goes out, fights against like Black Mask, Scarecrow, stuff like that. Until one night she's at some sort of gala or ball as Kate, and she runs into Maggie Sawyer, and they're both wearing tuxedos, and they share a dance with each other, have a good time. And later on, Maggie gets invited over to Kate's place. She sees the Matryoshka doll from the beginning and just being like, oh yeah, it was a gift from my dad when I was little. And she's like, oh, that's so sweet. Have a good night. And they give each other a kiss goodnight, and she gets back on the job and ready to continue fighting. Honestly, not much of a theme to that one, but it's solid. It's a nice, solid intro for people who didn't know what Batgirl stuff was. By the way, I think I usually rate these independently. So for Green Lantern's one, I'm going to give that one 7.5. Batwoman's, I'll give it a flat 7. So then we go into Red Robin, written by Scott Lobdell or by Tyler Kirkham, and we open up with a computer where Tim Drake has just figured out that Bruce Wayne and Batman are one and the same. Just being like, yep, I did it. I narrowed it down. There were like a few names I was considering. One of them was Enrique Fluente, but Bruce Wayne like absolutely has to be the guy. And we see like almost immediately there is a gala or something going on simultaneously to Batman being seen elsewhere, and he's like, dang it, I really thought I had that one. All right, well, I guess it's got to be the Enrique guy. We'll give that a shot. So Tim Drake is a really good gymnast, but like he's so good, he doesn't even have to think about it. But as he's doing one of his routines, he notices two old guys who definitely he's never seen there before. So he sees them getting into a car, just being like, that's weird. Why? What's going on with the old guys? So he manages to follow them, scout them out to a nearby aviary, makes his way in, and he's figured out that it's Batman once again. So he goes up and Batman's like, I'll admit it, I'm impressed. And Tim Drake just wants to gloat. He's just like wants to say like, yeah, Bruce, I know it's you. I know all about you. But he holds it together and he's just like, can I be Robin? And he points out like, yeah, no, of course I had to investigate Robin. And there was a Robin for a long time, but then all of a sudden he just disappeared. And that was the second Robin. And I don't know what happened to that kid, but Batman's not the same without a Robin. And Batman hears his application, just be like, no, this conversation's over. Don't ever look into me again. And so immediately, of course, he's like, well, I'm not just going to give up. So we see him doubling down. Some time passes and he's trying to track down like more on Batman, trying to get him to notice him again. And he, there's a pop-up window saying not going to happen. He's just like, all right, well, let's try something new. If I can't find Batman, then I'll get Batman to me. And so he hacks into an ATM to transfer over all of the Penguin's money into various charities. And he's like, yeah, that'll do it. That'll get Batman to come and say, wow, what a great job you're doing. You're totally worthwhile being my Robin. But then all of a sudden, one night, as he's going for a midnight snack, his house just gets like shot up like crazy. Batman busts in. He's like, hey, get down, get to your parents' room. Don't come out until I say so. You got that? And he's like, totally. And Drake puts it together of like, okay, yeah, that's Penguin's assassins. Like, he must have tracked down that it was me. So Batman eventually comes in and he's like, all right, let's talk. So apparently the parents went into witness protection. Tim Drake becomes Tim Drake because apparently Drake was his middle name beforehand. I was unaware of that. I don't even know what his last name is. And then he goes to live at Bruce Wayne's manor as his ward, his adoptive son. So obviously he finds the Batcave. He's ready to become Robin. And he asks like, hey, what happened to the second Robin? I never got cleared up on that. And he's like, he was an angry kid. He had his own problems. And then Joker straight up murdered him. But like, mainly the anger issues thing is what the main problem there was. And he's like, well, that sucks. And so Alfred goes to hand over the Robin outfit. He's like, look, I don't want to be like filling in for a dead kid's shoes. So I'm going to make this my own. And so he takes it, he goes, there's a big portrait of Jason on the wall, and he's just like, I'm going to make my own mistakes, but I'm never going to be you. And so he puts it on and he becomes Red Robin instead of Robin. And then they go on adventures. Some time passes. He bails and just like, I'm going to go do Teen Titans now. Bye. And so Teen Titans happens. And that's the story. That's it. That one's a lot weaker, but I feel like it's more weak just because I think that was the exact story that was in Teen Titans number 0, which was longer and therefore was able to flesh it out a bit better. But yeah, overall, it's like a 6. It's not great. It's not awful. But yeah, whole issue depends on if you like the characters, but I would say general pass. All-Star Western number 32, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Staz Johnson. Last issue, I'll be honest with you, last issue ended with them finding out that there's an imposter Jonah Hex going around doing crimes and stuff. Doesn't come up again, because I'm pretty sure this is the issue where they discovered, oh, we're going to be canceled in like 3 issues, so we're just going to wrap up our plots. So we open up in a saloon where some random dude named Blackthorn is playing poker, and Jonah Hex is there at the table as well, but nobody recognizes him, and he's just like, you're coming with me, Blackthorn. He's like, who the hell is this? Nah, and he pulls out a gun, aims it at Hex, and he's just like, now tell me who you are and what you want, or I'm going to start shooting. He's just like, you're an idiot, Blackthorn. And out through the doors of the saloon comes a lasso, pulls him, yanks him out, knocks the air out of him. Of course, it's Tallulah Black coming in for the assist. So they pick him up, and they're like, all right, we need to get him out of here as fast as possible. But as they start driving out of town on their horses, starts raining hard, and he's not able to stay up on his horse. So they stop in at another nearby saloon, and as they make their way in, the bartender's like, whoa, that guy, he's filthy, get him out of here. And they both pull out their guns saying, hey, this guy's a wanted man for like $10,000. We've got money. We just need a place to stay for the night, and then we're out first thing in the morning. Got it? And he's just like, all right, yeah, sounds good to me. So at that point, they sit around, they start doing their thing. There's a woman who makes her way out through the rain somewhere to another building we see. Meanwhile, Hex and Tallulah are just drinking like crazy. They're enjoying the night. Blackthorn keeps on trying to throw in like little bits and jabs, just being like, hey, yeah, I don't think you know how to handle your liquor. And every single time Tallulah back just smacks him upside the head. So a doctor stops in saying that one of the local women of this building is feeling ill. So he goes up to check on her, and we see the bartender and the doctor talking, saying like, yeah, okay, let's get this secret plan going. So Tallulah Black calls for some more booze, and as he gets the bottle off the shelf, he holds it underneath the counter and pours something from the doctor into it. And as he brings it over, Tallulah's like, now wait a minute, I saw you putting that under the bar. You trying to you piss in it or something? He's just like, oh, this is a wonderful establishment. I would never do such a thing. She's like, I'll be the judge of that. And she starts swilling it down. So some more time passes, and we see that woman who went out before has gone and contacted pretty much everybody in the town who's got a shotgun to come and show up to the saloon. And we see Tallulah and Jonah are completely just poisoned, basically. They're woozy, they're falling over themselves. And as Tallulah goes to smack Blackthorn up in the head again, she loses her balance, falls down, passes out on the floor. Jonah quickly follows. And that's where the bartender pulls out a shotgun, aims it at Blackthorn, being like, $10,000 is $10,000. I will be getting that now, and we're going to split it across the town. So the other townsmen come in, and they're like, okay, well, yeah, the poison worked, no big deal. However, it isn't like deadly poison. It is just knocking them out. And so the doctor comes down and says, look, put them onto their horses, strap them up, take their guns away from them, and just send them out of town. Like, no big deal. And we'll get this guy's bounty for ourselves. And a couple of people are like, what if they have guns stored out in the desert? Or what if they, like, come back and they've got, like, other friends or something? And everyone's like, oh my God, who cares? We'll have $10,000. It doesn't matter. So they do exactly that. And we see Tallulah and Jonah wake up a few hours later, and they are pissed. They are cursing like crazy and just like, yeah, all right, yeah, they took our guns. And Tallulah's pissed off about that because apparently one of them was her lucky shotgun. And we get the story of that, where she was doing a bounty for a guy named Valdez Woos, and she cut off the dude's head. And she's running along the rooftops for it, but she's being chased by a bunch of Valdez's men. So she's running over the rooftops. She gets to where her escape horse would be, but it turns out a couple kids like unhitched it, and they were playing around with it. So now she's got nowhere to jump down to, men on her rear. She takes the head, throws it, and then pulls out her pistol. 6 shots, 6 men to kill. She hits 5 of them, but one of them misses. So that guy pulls out his shotgun, says, oh, this is you missed, now it's curtains for you. Pulls the trigger, gun jams. So Tallulah grabs the gun, aims it back at him, and he's like, it's jammed, it's not going to do anything. But as she pulls the trigger, blows him away. And she's like, and that's why it's my lucky shotgun. And he's like, that wasn't luck. That was just like a piece of metal or something got in the way of the firing pin. She's like, nah, that was luck. Shut up. I want my lucky shotgun back. So as they're arguing, some like Oregon Trail Quakers or whatever are driving their way past and just like, why are you guys tied to those horses? And just be like, oh, we were double crossed and we were poisoned. And our whiskey was poisoned. And the woman's just like, oh, whiskey's already poisoned. That's no good for you. And Jonah's like, yeah, anyway, could you take these ropes off us? And he's just like, no, I don't think I will. And he's like, okay, well, why not? And like, he's clearly dressed up as like a preacher. And he's like, aren't you a preacher? Shouldn't you help us? And he's like, nope, God helps those who help themselves. And you guys seem like you are not able to help yourselves. Goodbye. And just drives off. So we see like a full day passes of them strapped to their horses, no water or anything like that. And they're like, oh, this doesn't look good. So finally they come across a group of bandits who had actually jumped that same couple from before. And they're, getting their wagon burned, the dude's getting beat up to all hell, and Jonah and Tallulah finally jump in. They're like, hey, that's enough. Don't, ease up. And the bandits are like, oh yeah, you guys are strapped to horses. What are you going to do? And they pull out some guns, aim it at 2 of them. They manage to, get their horses into the way of the shots, but their horses fall down on the ground with them still strapped to them. And as one of the guys comes up with a gun on Jonah, he's like, the band is basically like, I can promise you this is not going to be your best morning, but it will be your last. So it's weird because this is one of the longest issues, I feel like. We get an entire like build up and then move on to a totally separate plot in the second half as well. I don't dislike it. It's perfectly fine on its own. It just feels to me like this is the sort of thing of they knew they were coming down to the last few issues, and they knew they didn't have as much time to tell the fake Jonah Hex story, so they just kind of were like, all right, we're going to do this story. This is something we wanted to do, and we're just going to see where it goes. So it's not a bad one, but it does feel like a major pivot. I'm going to say I'll give it a 7. It's fine. It's definitely just, I don't know. This book has had its place in the DC universe. It's held very true to that, but it also, because of that, has not branched out a lot since the Future story. So I'm just enjoying it for what it is, but it's not anything amazing. Justice League Dark number 32, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Andre Guinaldo. So last issue, the spirit or true form or whatever of Nightmare Nurse possessed Zatanna, and that's no good. So we open up this issue in the House of Mystery, and Nightmare Nurse is like, all right, I can dig it. I'm good with this power set. This is nice. And Swamp Thing and Constantine are both like, okay, let's just reconsider here. You just possess somebody who like we all care about instead of Alice Winters who like we don't care about. So like, can you not? And she's like, hold on, let me try something. And then she uses her powers to make like this massive windstorm. And she's just like, do you understand the power that Zatanna has? Like, she has only been at it for like a few years, technically her time. I've been at magic for millennia. Dear Lord, she is powerful. She's got so much going on here. And so Swamp Thing manages to, I don't know, put himself in the windstorm and then reform. It doesn't make any sense. But regardless, he's now in like a more menacing form. And Zatanna, Nightmare Nurse, is like, hold on, let me try this backward magic. And she says, burn, backwards. And he just catches on fire. So at that point, Dead Man comes in being like, okay, I think you're a good person, but I'm still not willing to put up with this. And so she turns Dead Man to stone. And she's like, oh, yeah, no, this is great. And then Constantine comes up and puts a blade to her neck and just like, all right, look, those are little parlor tricks. Setting Swamp Thing on fire is something I do like every 3 weeks. But seriously, you need to calm down and you need to let Zatanna go. And she's like, or what? You're going to cut both our throats? Nah, you like her too much. And he's just like, you know I would do it. And just like, all right, then do it. Slice away. Show me. But of course he won't. And he gives up and she's like, coward. And he's like, yeah, probably, but gave me time to do this. And so apparently he was casting a spell to open back up the portal to the between space. And he gets Swamp Thing to root them all down to the ground so that the portal doesn't suck them up. But it will suck out the spirit of Nightmare Nurse. And we see it starting to do that. It starts coming out of Zatanna's body. But the portal's energy is far too strong and far too uncontrollable, and it not only sucks the rest of them in through the portal, it sucks the entire House of Mystery in. So now the House of Mystery is in the in-between, and Constantine's like, all right, that's not good. That's pretty bad, all things considered. So Nightmare Nurse jumps out of Zatanna's body saying like, okay, I may have gone a bit overboard with the mass amount of power that Zatanna had, got a bit drunk off it. I'm cool now. But we can all work together and break free of the between. And Zatanna is just like, what do you mean work together? You are literally the worst. Not only did you possess this innocent woman, Alice Winters, but you then possessed me. No, screw you. You're the worst. We're not working with you anymore. And she starts saying like, no, you don't understand. Alice Winters was about to die. Like, she's 5 minutes from death. I possessed her body in order to allow her to continue to live. That I did her a benefit here. And Zatanna's like, okay, well, she doesn't seem to think so. She seems to think it was a bad thing. And Dead Man's like, okay, well, hold on. Maybe she's still like telling the truth. Maybe she sees it as a good thing. And Zatanna's like, she's a demon. Like, she's the worst. Why are you taking her word? And Dead Man's like, well, Constantine's also the worst, but we listen to him occasionally. And Constantine's like, yeah, all right, fair. By the way, guys, didn't know if I ever mentioned this, but the between space is alive, and it's going to try to consume us. So we should probably figure out how to get out of here sooner rather than later. And we see it starts like reaching out, consuming them. Zatanna says, all right, you guys go out, give a distraction. I'm going to do something here to get this all pulled together. So Swamp Thing, Constantine, and Deadman go out. Nightmare Nurse is kept back. And as they go out, we see Swamp Thing is almost immediately taken hold of. Constantine manages to free him. Deadman's like, well, if it's alive, I can possess it. Let me go do that. He tries to. Of course, that doesn't work because it's an like cosmic entity, but Deadman still seems surprised. So at that point, Nightmare Nurse shows up and manages to free Deadman, just being like, yeah, hey, I was just wanting to see what Zatanna was up to, but I came out here when I saw you were in trouble. So Constantine's like, hey, so what is she up to? And he's like, oh, she's going to unite her consciousness with the House of Mystery, and she thinks that's going to be enough power to get them out. So everyone busts back in through the windows, and Zatanna's like, you didn't give me enough time. He's like, tough, we're out of time. We got to do it now. And she's like, I don't have enough power. I haven't built up the spell enough yet. To which Nightmare Nurse says, okay, but Constantine has had this house for longer than you have. He already is like closer to it. You need to unite together in order to do that. And she's like, no, I don't want to merge with him again. And she's like, okay, well, we all die then. How about that? And she's like, fine, whatever, let's do it. But like, we still need to distract the entity to give us enough time. And Nightmare Nurse is like, I'm going to go do it. I have this idea that I'm a nurse. Maybe I can give it some life, and because that's what it's after anyway. So yeah, I'm just going to go do that. And Deadman's like, but you'll be consumed. You'll be left behind here. And she's like, that's fine. You know me, whatever. And so Zatanna says, I don't know about that. She puts her hand onto Nightmare Nurse's like demon form, gets the human form to appear as like a soul thing, and then makes out with it for a minute. And everyone in the room is like, oh, what was this a thing? Did they have a thing? And so Nightmare Nurse is like, oh, well, that's great. Awesome. Anyway, I'm going to go out now. Bye. So it goes out. Constantine and Zatanna complete the spell together, get the portal to open back up. They start going through it. Meanwhile, Nightmare Nurse, running distraction, uses her magical medicine rod thing to hold back the nothingness at bay long enough for them to get out. And she's like, all right, they did it. I'm good. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now, but I give up my life for you, nothingness. And in her dying words, she says, Father, implying that the nothingness is her dad. So that's interesting. Meanwhile, a field in upstate New York, the House of Mystery just crashes into the field and just like, all right, well, that was a rough landing, but we did it. And Deadman's like, we got to go back. We got to save Nightmare Nurse. And it's just like, nah, man, she's gone. There's no bringing her back. And Alice Winters is also on death's door. She's not going to be able to survive much longer without Nightmare Nurse. And Constantine's like, see, you should have just listened to her to begin with, because then we would have been able to save them both. But no, you had to be all, yeah, let's fight first. And Zatanna's like, well, I don't know about that. And so she exhales this weird soul-looking wind, and it reforms into Nightmare Nurse. And it turns out this is a hyper, like, hard spell called the Maldacena paradox, where if you take a fragment of somebody's soul, then it contains the entirety of that person's essence. So we brought her back entirely. And so she goes up to Alice Winters, and she's like, hey, I'm not going to possess you forcefully this time. I'm going to ask for consent, and I'm going to let you in the driver's seat every once in a while. You cool with that? And Alice is like, yeah, sure, cool. So she goes into the body again. Nightmare Nurse is back to 100%, and she just goes over to Zatanna, just being like, you are one hell of a kisser. And Zatanna's like, all right, whatever. I did it for Alice, not for you. Regardless, we're done with this arc. Let's get the House of Mystery back somewhere it should be. So they fly off. Tune in next time for a Deadman story. It's good. It's a solid wrap up there. I think they did a good job of setting up, this beginner stuff of Nightmare Nurse in this other dimension, and then pulling it all out through there. It was just a good time all around. It did a great job of setting up all that extra stuff, and then adding on top of it here that, we got a little bit more Nightmare Nurse character development, where, honest to God, I thought she was going to be a character that showed up in Blight and then just disappeared again, but no, it's good to have her here. She's an interesting character. I'm going to say this is a solid, I'm going to say 7.5. And the only reason it's not an 8 is because of the brief little period of, oh, now Zatanna is captured. Because it just, having it undone so quickly makes it feel just like, oh, you did that for the cliffhanger and nothing else. Got it. So yeah, it's tiny little thing there, but other than that, still a great issue. Batman Eternal number 12, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fox, Layman, and Seeley, art by Mikkel Janin. So this issue picks up with the Roman Falcone. He comes in and he just starts, well, his gangs, I should say, start shooting up a bunch of Penguin's men, all a bunch of different safe houses, just straight up murders them and just being like, yep, this is it. This is the start of the new face of Gotham City. New face of justice, I should say. And then we go over to Bard's apartment. Jason Bard, he is invited over Maggie Sawyer and Harvey Bullock, and he's got a whole string map up on the walls, and he's like, look, I've mapped it all out. Those hits last night from Falcone, they weren't reported to the police at all, so Penguin's finally wised up there, but like, it's only going to get worse. Penguin has already lashed out at Roadrunner's place. It's on fire. It's been burning like crazy. So we need to end this gang war now. And they're just like, Jesus, dude, your apartment's like head to toe, these string things. Like, do you even have a bed? And he's like, there's more important things than bed, Bullock. So he points out saying like, look, I have an idea. I have a plan. I'm going to need to get some people on board, but I think we can like end this gang war officially before it gets out of hand. So we cut over to Jim Gordon at Blackgate. He's being put into a police truck. One of the guards is like, you know, my sister was on that train. And she'll never walk again. And Jim's like, for what it's worth, I'm actually sorry. And he gets slammed in the truck. So as the truck's going away, one of the guards is very clearly Batman. And Gordon calls him out. He's just like, you know, that guard usually falls asleep before we even hit the bridge. So you're a little bit too attentive at your job. And he's like, noted. Anyway, here's the thing. Let me catch you up. I'm still looking for the evidence. I'm still going to, like, get you out of this. I'm going to prove you innocent. And Gordon's like, dude, this is just the opening statements. It's not the end-all, be-all. Yes, my trial's beginning. But, like, if you don't have the evidence, and we all know the gang war thing is going on, focus on the gang war. Like, no matter what, I'll be fine. If I go to jail, then I'm in jail. Yeah, that sucks, but, like, I trust in the justice system. And even if they find me guilty, it's because I'm guilty. So at this point, we cut to Gotham Hospital. If you remember a few issues ago, Harper Row, her brother Cullen, got infected with a nanobot virus. And so Harper's like, all right, well, I'm going to get involved now. I'm going to do what I can. Red Robin, whenever he's flying around Gotham, his suit auto-connects to computers, like just barely for a few seconds, just to like pick up new intel and stuff. So all I have to do is wait until he auto-connects to mine and I'll hook onto him. So of course, Red Robin's flying around. She gets a hook on him as he's going to interrogate Professor Pig about what's going on. And in doing so, she hacks his system. And his system starts freaking out like, there's someone in your system. And Red Robin's like, nobody's good enough to get into my system. What the hell is going on? So as he's like zapping Professor Pig because he didn't expect this to happen, he shuts, Harper gets a good peek at like GCPD files and a whole bunch of other stuff. And she's able to almost track back to where Red Robin's operating out of, and he's just like, oh, shut it down. So he shuts down the system. He zaps Harper's computer and immediately tells his system, like, figure out how in the hell she did that, because that shouldn't be possible. Meanwhile, over in Brazil, if you remember, Red Hood met up with Batgirl, and Batgirl's like, Jesus Christ, Batman sent Red Hood after me? That's stupid. That's dumb. I can't believe. Is it because I'm the one person in the Bat family who wasn't chosen? I just became Batgirl, and he's always looked down on me for that. And Red Hood's like, what? No, Jesus, dude, you're just too close to this. Like, you almost beat an unconscious man who was totally innocent because you're just too close to it. And I'm here just to make sure that that anger, which is good, be angry, is guided properly. And she's like, what time is it? And he's like, it's like almost noon, our time, Gotham time. And he's just like, yeah, my father's trial is about to begin. That's why we don't have any time to waste. So if you're going to be sticking around me anyway, hop on the Bat bike. Let's go. So we go to the courtroom and we have one of the lawyers stepping up. It's a prosecutor, and he's giving his opening statement, basically saying, like, James Gordon is a saint. He's a good man. We've all been around James Gordon doing good things. But this isn't about him being a good man. This is about what he did that day. And what he did that day was kill a bunch of people through his own actions and his own stupidity. And that's all on him. And no matter what the defense says, no matter how good of a person he is, forget all that, because he definitely committed this crime. And so immediately everyone's just like, oof. That kind of tears apart his entire defense, which is he's a good person. And Vicky Vale comes out talking to her partner, Joey, and it's just like, something's wrong about this. Like, all the news people are following this story, but nobody's talking about the gang war. And now that I'm stuck to this, like, I'm not going to be able to talk about the gang war either. So, like, no one's aware of the gang war. And that's where Jason Bard comes out being like, yes, Vicky Vale, I agree. However, I think that I have an idea that could get us back on the right track, but I might need your help. And Vicky's like, I'm listening. So back over at the Wayne Mansion, Julia is just talking to Alfred, basically saying, like, man, how do you get life out of being a butler? You were literally like one of the best field medics, and now you're a butler. And Alfred's like, trust me, I get plenty of excitement. For instance, I was buying biscuits the other day, and at that point, Tim Drake runs in, and he's like, did nobody think to tell me about Harper Row and her crazy-ass hacking skills? And then he sees Julia, and she's like, oh, you're military. What are you doing here? And she's like, who's the junior detective, Alfred? And he's just like, Master Timothy, this is my daughter. This is my daughter, Master Timothy. And he's just like, oh, hey, nice to... Hold on, did you say daughter? What's that about? So they make their way out of the room. Julia tries to follow, but of course they Batman out of there, going down into the cave. And he's just like, Alfred, should I ask about, like, what's up with the daughter thing? Is that a touchy subject? He's just like, her mother didn't want me seeing her, and neither does she, but, like, I'm still hoping to salvage something. And Tim's like, well, good luck. Anyway, was nobody going to tell me about Harper Row before she hacked into my... Who is this girl? And she's like, well, she saved Batman a few times, so there's that going on. And she's like, okay, you need to tell me everything about this chick now. Like, seriously. So we go to the rooftop of Beacon Tower, which is just a construction site, and Harvey recounts to Jason, they're both standing up there, like, yeah, before the signal, before all that stuff, there was a number you could call, and you called the number and Batman would show up and meet you wherever. And Gordon used to do that back in the day, back when Penguin was taking the city away from Falcone, and it was just the three of them. It was Gordon, Batman, and Harvey Dent. And before you can get Harvey Dent out, Batman arrives on the scene, and he's like, Bullock, how in the hell did you get that number? He's like, I got it from a mutual friend. What do you think? Anyway, Mr. Bard here is the one who wanted the meeting, so it's all up to him. And Batman's like, cool. What do you want, man? And he's like, I can end the gang war by the end of the week. And he's like, doubt it, but continue. And he's like, sure, all we need is to, quote unquote, capture you for a while. And then the last thing we get is back at Blackgate. It's middle of the night. Gordon is pulled out of his bunk. He wasn't asleep yet. And the guard is like, you got a visitor. And he's like, no, we're way past visitors' hours. What the hell is this? So the guard knocks him in the stomach, knocks the wind out of him, drags him into the visitor's room. And sitting in there at the visitor's table is James Gordon Jr., who, if you weren't following Batgirl, should be dead, according to Jim Gordon. He thinks he should be dead. He wasn't in Suicide Squad, but yeah, no, it's all just catching up to him now. Anyway, solid issue. I do think this is one of those times where every plot gets a little bit of time. Every plot, we catch up just a little bit on all the plots, except maybe Stephanie Brown, but we catch up on everything else. But the downside of that is nothing really moves forward. That being said, the James Bard stuff, which seems to be like the main central focus right now for the GCPD side, I'm enjoying the fact that that gets a little bit of forward momentum, because all it has been for the past couple issues is like, man, how are we supposed to arrest anybody? It's so hard. Like, I'm happy we're getting beyond that. So all in all, I think it's a solid issue. I think I would give this one... Also, Mikkel Janin art, just got to say, top tier. Love it, whole way through. To which point I'm going to bump this from a 7.5 up to an 8. I really enjoy the Janin art. So yeah, solid issue throughout. Looking forward to the next part. Future's End number 8, written by Azarel, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Scott Eaton. So this issue picks up on Cadmus Island, where King Faraday is talking to Deathstroke, and they're basically just saying, like, yeah, nah, Grifter's part of the team now, but, like, Deathstroke isn't convinced that he even has this new power to spot metahumans without, like, even if they're not visible to the human eyes, just being able to spot them. And Faraday's like, trust me, I got an informant, like, pretty close to him, so I'm pretty sure on that. And we then cut over to Grifter, who is dealing with 50 Sue. And I'm never not going to get tired of saying that name. 50 Sue essentially just doesn't like him, like, right off the bat. And he doesn't understand why, and he's just like, yeah, well, thanks for reminding me why I don't like kids. And then all of a sudden he gets thrown out into the ocean, and as he's scrambling around, like, about to drown, an OMAC comes out being like, do not resist, you have breached sector or whatever. And he's like, I'm not resisting. And so the OMAC goes to grab him, but then 50 Sue just teleports him right back to park bench where she's sitting. And he's like, kid, if you were able to do such incredible things, why in the hell are you just hanging out on this island all day? And she's like, what do you say? This is exactly what I want to do. Life is good. I just do whatever the hell I want here, and people let me do it. And he's like, great. Any reason that you picked on me? And she's like, yeah. Batman has Robin. Winnie the Pooh has Piglet. Like, you are not Deathstroke's sidekick. I am. And don't you forget that. And Grifter's like, noted. I don't even want to be here. And so she just runs off. We cut over to the Fast Lane offices, the blog of Lois Lane, where she has gotten the paper that was left in her little secret box, and apparently the numbers on it translate to some coordinates in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Like, there's seemingly nothing there. And Lois is like, there might not be anything there, but golly, there's definitely going to be something there. Charter a plane. And the guy she's talking to is like, we don't have money for, like, a chartered plane. We're barely making rent here. And she's like, we're using my personal account. This is what's needed for a story. And he's like, okay, but, like, if you die, we don't have a job. And she's like, get me the plane, damn it. So then we go over to Columbia University, where Dr. Yamazaki is ready to test his teleportation tech with Jason Rush. And so he sets up a china plate with his wife's, like, engraving on it, and he's like, yes, it's only fair that she be the first thing that humanity has ever teleported, because it would have saved her life back then. So they start up the test, they start running everything, they're at 100% power, and then they manage to dematerialize the plate, and then it starts transferring over the matrix beams, yada yada yada. Point being is it starts drawing too much energy, and it threatens to, like, tear apart the lab. Jason shuts it down prematurely, and Dr. Yamazaki is like, it ran perfectly in the simulations. You must have messed something up, Jason. And he's just like, no, I didn't. Like, there was nothing. It just, the power went beyond what the dampeners could handle. Like, that's literally all it was. And he's just like, I gotta go. I gotta think. So he walks away, and Jason's a little bit unsure of himself. But as he's standing there by himself, Superman, wearing the mask, comes down and is just like, hey, man, where's Firestorm been? He's just like, Firestorm's not a thing anymore. We're not doing that. And Superman's like, cool. You building a teleporter? Are you stealing JLA tech? And he's like, what? No, we're coming up with it totally independently. I would never steal JLA tech. He's like, right, totally. And it didn't work, so it doesn't even matter. And he's like, cool, yeah. Anyway, go make up with Ronnie and be Firestorm again. We need him. And then Superman just, like, flies off. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Jesus. So we go out to deep space, where Shade, consisting of Ray Palmer, Frankenstein, and Amethyst, have come across Stormwatch Station, and Ray Palmer's just kind of doing, like, a captain's log, and he's saying, like, I really want to help Frankenstein with his missing arm, but we got to focus on the Stormwatch stuff first. So they go out, they get all of the people who died out there, but they seem to be missing the bodies of Apollo and the engineer. And they're like, that's a mystery, but regardless, we need to look into the bodies we currently have. And Palmer starts looking at Hawkman's body, and he's like, Amaya, do you have your magic sword with you? And he's just like, yeah, why? He's like, let me have it for a second. He's like, okay. And so he picks up the sword and he holds it above his head, and he's like, well, I just want to try this out. And he cuts off Hawkman's arm, and they're just like, Jesus, man, what are you doing? And he's just like, I thought this would be the best fit for Frankenstein's body. And so now Frankenstein just has Hawkman's arm. We then cut to Southeast Asia, and we meet two damn people who, I don't know, running like a military convoy or something, or maybe they're like mercenaries. It's really hard to tell. But they make their way down this river, and they're talking about the war with Earth 2, and one of them makes the comment of like, we called the other Earth 2, but like, of course we called it Earth 2. Why would we call ourselves Earth 2? It just made them seem more other. But as they are talking, they get a call over the radio, and apparently there was a cave that was opened during the war that they thought had like a temple with like golden stuff inside. And he's like, what, it's not down there? And he's like, no, it is down here, but there's something else in here. Do not come near here. It is a horrific place. And as we see inside this place, there's a bunch of brainiac markings, the 3 dots and whatnot. So these people who went in here, they are all brutally killed. And this last guy's like, take the boat, get out of here. Don't wait for us. But as they are sitting there trying to get more information, out from the woods emerges this robot-looking creature that jumps onto the boat, immediately kills one of the guys, and then like snaps the head off of the other guy. So that's that. And then back in New Orleans, we have Midge, who is with John Constantine at this point. She wakes up from a nightmare, and she's like, I was speaking Laotian in my dreams, and it's the end, it's coming, it's attacking. Seemingly she saw that thing that was going on out in the forest, and Constantine's like, yeah, I know, and I think I might need some help this time. So what does that last part mean? I don't know. The robot character didn't look familiar. It's definitely not an OMAC. Might be like a Brother Eye sort of thing, probably Brainiac related. I don't know. The rest of the stuff, it's pretty stock standard. I will say I don't think I quite understand what's going on with the Deathstroke, Grifter, 50 Sue, Cadmus plot yet, but I don't think I'm supposed to. I think that's supposed to still be a bit of a mystery there, but it's getting to be a little bit frustrating because every time we got to the island, they keep on saying like, oh, so the job, and like, oh, all this stuff, the mission, and it's just like, tell us. Just say what you're planning here. I know it's all like a big mystery, but there's only so long I can take of the mission. So, yeah, I'm going to give this one a 6.5. Not quite that great for me, but it's doing all right. And that's it. That's all the comics put out by DC Comics this June 25th, 2014. And I just remembered, like literally as I went to press record on this section of the video, 2 weeks ago, I said, I'm going to do a weekly question, and I'm going to pose it to you, the audience, so that I can drive some engagement up a little bit. And then I forgot. I just didn't do it last week. So that's on me. But I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to pose a question this week. But first, I'm going to mention all the new comics coming out next week. So, next week, what do you have to look forward to? We have, in no particular order, Batwing, Action Comics, Batman/Superman, Superman Unchained. Jesus Christ, that's a book. I forgot that was a book. Genuinely. Superman Unchained, Green Lantern, Aquaman and the Others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Justice League 3000, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, and then our 2 weeklies, Batman Eternal and Future's End. I think out of that, Action Comics is part of the Doom story. Maybe Batman Superman is as well. And then Green Lantern's part of its own event as well. So yeah, that's all happening. But question, for those of you who have been paying attention to Future's End, what do you mean none of you have been paying attention to Future's End? What am I reading it for then? All right, fine. Vague question then. If a character were to be named, I don't know, 50 Sue, would that be the worst character name of all time? If you think that the answer is no, keep it to yourself. If you have any other comments that agree with me, go ahead and leave them down in the video below in all the comment section and whatnot. Otherwise, we have a Discord or a subreddit or a Patreon. That's all places that you can come and tell me thoughts about things. And I will definitely read them all because I have nothing better to do with my time. So yeah, that's pretty much the show. glad you joined us. Glad you listened to the end. Here's the thing. Video-wise, I understand people jumping around because you have like a visual cue of like, yeah, okay, I only want to pay attention to these parts. Audio-wise, I don't have as much of a tell for how many people actually listen all the way here to the end. So every once in a while, I want to do something like first person to say the word pudding in a comment gets like $100. And just stick it here at the end to see if anybody notices. Mind you, that is not me officially doing that, but I might do that eventually. So stay tuned. Anyway, that's the episode. I have gone on too long. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week. Do all the fancy things that get us higher up in engagement and algorithms and whatnot. And be sure to always remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.